Hi everyone, this is Phil Bendy from Braid Knot Solutions. Today I'm quickly going to show you how to tie the double down loop knot. But before I do so, I wanted to show you two types of finish that you can apply to this knot. This one is the Cow Hitch finish, and this one is what's called the Risotto Finish. It's basically a reverse uni knot. I hope to show you at the end of the video how to tie both. Right, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm using a coloured shoelace. The knotted end will represent the main line and the unknotted end will represent the tag end. First, make a loop in the main line. Make sure you allow yourself plenty of tag end. Then you're going to form a cow hitch around your finger. There are two basic methods of doing this. One way is to take the head of the loop back over itself so that it forms two separate loops as shown. Then with your other hand, put the finger and thumb through each loop, bring and pinch together. Then bring the finger up through the other loop, pulling on both main line and tag end with your other finger to form the classic hitch. The other method is to take your loop and put the thumb and forefinger of one hand through it, spreading them and taking them beyond the outside of each line that they control, pinching together through the other side. Then once again bring the finger up through the loop controlled by the thumb and pull together. And you have the classic cow hitch. Before I get into tying the knot properly, I know that many of you like to tie loops through the eyelets of your lures, so I thought I would have a go at doing this. For the purposes of this exercise, the scissors will represent my lure. There's no real right way or wrong way to do this. This way is perhaps the easiest that I have found. Take the end of your line up through the eyelet of your lure, pulling off sufficient to tie the knot. Then just drop it down, relaxed. Take your main line, cross it over like so that you have a loop through the eyelet. Then form another loop in the main line so that it's going to sit adjacent to the other loop. So now you've got two loops as shown. Then, just as before, place your thumb and forefinger through each loop, like so. Pinch them together once they're through. Then bring your finger up through the loop occupied by your thumb and pull both lines tight with your other hand, forming the cow hitch. And you will note that the lure will be sitting just on one strand of the cow hitch, and in fact this furthest line will be the main line and this will be your tag end. And when you pull the main line, that loop will cinch down, leaving this loop as the main loop, but that's for later. Okay, let's start the double down loop knot. First, form a loop, make the main line furthest away from you and what will be the tag end closest to you. Pull off enough tag end to do the job. Form the cow hitch, like so, and like so. Adjust the size of the cow hitch, so. Take the end of your loop, the end of your tag end, thread it from one side through the other, remembering to pull off at least enough to cover the width of your hand and then a bit more for the type of finish that you're going to make, be it Cow Hitch or Risotto Finish. So we'll take a nice amount like that. Now you can proceed with the rest of the knot if your lines are really thick and inflexible, but for fine lines like braid, you should certainly do this next step, which is to take the line back over the top of the cow hitch and through and out the other side, effectively back the way it has come. Now collect up the main line like so, and with one hand and with your other take hold of the two lines which will actually be the wrapping loop, and by pulling up the main line and tag you will join the two loops together. You won't actually be seeing all of this good stuff with fine braid because it is very fine, but essentially when you pull on both sets of lines, everything will become splendidly taut. Now it might be that the size of the loop isn't quite how you'd want it. Maybe perhaps you want to make it a bit smaller. To do that, you just relax the wrapping loop lines, pull down with this finger inside the cow hitch, pull up with the other hand that holds the main line and the tag end, like so, and then level off, pulling on both lines of the wrapping loop. If it's still not quite right, give it another go. Probably it will be, because line is a lot slipperier than this shoelace. But anyway, we've now got it where we want it, and it should look something like this. And this bit is going to be the wrapping loop, which ultimately will become the secondary loop, and gives this knot its name, double down. Now we're going to proceed to wrap the wrapping loop around the main line and the tag. I normally go 3 at a time before bunching them all together. So there's 1, there's 2, and there is 3. Push them all. Normally I do this with braid because it's easier, but you can see how they're nicely forming up. So that's 3, 4, oops, there we go, 5, go 6. So I've done 6, and then just push them up like so. With fine braid, I would recommend doing between 80 and 20 wraps. Obviously a lot less for fluorocarbon and monofilm. Once you've done the outward wraps, you're now ready to do a few inward wraps. I normally do about 3 or 4, even with fine braid. So that's what we're going to do next. So we go back the way we came. And there's 1, a little pull. There's 2. And there is 3. Now we're ready to do the wraps inside of the cow hitch, which can vary depending on the size of your line. For fine braid, I would do 3 of the following. You can do less for thicker lines. So let's do that. So we take the wrapping loop once through the cow hitch. There we go. That's it. So we've gone through once. And with this thickness of shoelace, I can usually squeeze in another. I imagine that in fluoro or mono, this line of this thickness would be pretty substantial. But here we are. So now we've got a nice, what's going to be the secondary loop. I'll get my finger in it, and as I mentioned right at the beginning, we've got the 2 loops of the cow hitch. This furthest one is going to be controlled by the main line. So the next step is to take hold of the wrapping loop in one finger, give everything a little pull by pulling on the tag end. Now the key line to pull on is going to be, let's get this in camera, is going to be the main line. So that's the one we're going to pull, and as we do so, you should see this furthest loop start to contract and cinch the knot. So there he goes, which it's doing. Might have to give it a bit more pull. That's it. A little bit of a pull. Now that's leaving this big secondary loop and what will be the main loop. As I've said in the more detailed instructions on my blog and in my other video, pull on this secondary loop first to pull out any excess slack in the knot. The idea being to keep this more or less the same size as it is now. Obviously this is quite small. Might just about get my finger in there. That's it. Now I'm ready to sort of pull on that. Pull on the main line. So, which as you saw is cinching down this secondary loop. The whole knot is becoming much tighter until you can't move it anymore. And now you've got the classic double down loop knot with the two loops and tag end. And then it's up to you which kind of finish you want to put on the end. I would highly recommend that you do put some kind of finish to increase the strength of the knot. So we've completed the main double down loop knot. Now let's turn our attention to the finish. Although technically finish is a bit inaccurate because what we're talking about are two types of lock knot. This is something that climbers will recognize very well. Let's turn our attention to what I refer to as the cow hitch lock knot. As you can see, we have the main line furthest away from us and the tag end closest to us. I find it's easier to tie this knot with a little bit of tension. Just makes it a bit easier. So if you've got your line coming from a line spool, you would put the line spool perhaps between your knees. If the line is coming through the guides off of the reel, you've got some natural tension there. It just makes the whole process a little bit easier. So you take your tag end and you remember this mnemonic because you're putting in place a series of reversed hitches and you need to know where in the process you are. Two reversed hitches forms one cow hitch, but I tend to count by the hitch rather than by the cow hitched. And I find that this mnemonic helps me remember whether I'm on an over hitch or an under hitch, so that if I lose my place, which invariably I do, I can go by whether I'm on an even number or an odd number. Odd numbers are always over, even numbers are always under. So without further ado, let's get going. So over is going to be 1, like so. And then I tend to just give it a little pull to my right before pulling down. If you're using mono or fluoro, you can moisten this bit of line as well, just to make sure that the hitches go in. If you don't have much tag length left, you can use your teeth believe it or not, get the end of the tag end in your teeth, pull your head to the right, then jerk it back to the left, and it will produce the same result. It's particularly effective with very heavy line. So over is 1, under, because we're going under the main line, back towards myself, is going to be 2. Pull to the right, pull to the left, and you'll get this first cow hitch, which should look like that. Over will be 3. Pull to the right a bit, like so. Back. Give it another one. Back. Under will be 4. So over to the right, back, to the right, back. This is a lot easier with fine braid and gets more difficult with thicker lines. Over will be 5. I think we're running out of tag end, but you get the idea. Over is 5 and under would be 6, completing 3 cow hitches. With fine braid, I tend to do 30 of these reversed hitches, and obviously less with fluoro and mono. The purpose of the cow hitches is to absorb the excess stresses and strains in the knot, and it's quite common to see to see the cow hitch stretching off down the line as it absorbs all this extra pressure, but it does give you extra poundage, so that's why it's a favorite of mine. But many people who tie the FG knot will be familiar with what's called the Risotto finish. This is a lot less time consuming to tie when you're experienced with it, and a lot of people prefer it to the cow hitch method I've just shown you. So we'll get to that now. Okay, now I'm going to turn my attention to the Risotto finish or Rizzuto lock knot. You seldom hear much about it outside of the line-to-line knots such as the FG knot or the PR bobbin knot, but it is nonetheless a very good locking knot, and more to the point, it's quite easy to tie once you understand what's going on. Unfortunately, most of the videos I have looked at where it is being demonstrated, it's not made particularly clear how it's being tied, so I hope to rectify that in this video. Okay, for the purposes of this exercise, I have tied a surgeon's loop knot to give myself more tag end, like so. The top end, the top line here is the main line, and this is the tag. So you just take the tag end over the top and make as many turns as you think necessary, going back towards the knot that you're supporting. I'm not sure how many you need for fine braid in the 10 pound to 12 pound class. I would hazard a guess at about 8 or more. So let's do that now. So you just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll leave it at 5. You need to remember how many turns you have made. Once you've finished, trap the end of the tag end with the knot that you are supporting. Now we move to the other end, and you'll see that if you start twisting this bottom part of the loop away from you, it's actually going to unravel the wraps that you've just put in. But by the same token, as you start winding it around at the far end, you're putting on the same amount that you're taking off at the back end. So that's what we're going to do now. So you go 1, 2, 3, hope you're seeing all of this, 4, and 5. Looks a bit messy, but if you can see clearly, the tag end and the main line inside the wraps are sort of more or less parallel, and you've got this length of surplus loop left over. I'm still a bit of a novice at perfecting how to tie this. Seems like I tie it a slightly different way each time. But the idea is that you pull on the end of the tag and you feed the line in this loop so that it all smoothly comes together. As you can see, the loop is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and you can probably pull it a bit as well. It should give it a pull, end up something like that. And you can see how the tag end is pointing forward, which is good for retrieval. It's a nice smooth finish, and obviously when the main pull is coming on the loop side of it, it's going to be much harder for the tag end to come unraveled if you've got a lock knot like this in place. And that's it. That is the Rizzuto lock knot.